The stars, like scattered diamonds on a velvet canvas, cast a cold and indifferent gaze upon Earth. They twinkled with an ancient light, untouched by the affairs of the small blue planet below. On the bridge of the Zareth flagship, Eclipse, Admiral Kale stood as still as a statue, his four angular arms crossed tightly against his chest. His skin, a dark metallic hue, seemed to drink in the faint glow of Earth displayed on the main screen before him. "What a fragile world," he murmured, his voice a low, disdainful rumble that echoed across the silent command deck. "Unworthy of our attention." Behind him, Commander Vera approached, her steps measured and respectful, as she handed over a report. Her eyes flickered with a hint of concern as she spoke. "Scans show rudimentary space travel capabilities in orbital station, satellites, and low-grade propulsion systems. Their technology is centuries behind ours." A smirk curled on Kale's lips, a cold satisfaction lighting his eyes. "Another planet to bring into the Dominion. Begin preparations for occupation." Vera hesitated, a rare moment of doubt crossing her usually composed demeanor. "Admiral, our intelligence team hasn't completed their analysis of human behavior. Perhaps we should." Kale's gaze snapped to her, sharp and unyielding. "Look at them," he said, gesturing dismissively toward the screen, which displayed images of Earth's sprawling cities. "Divided. Primitive. They squabble over borders and resources. They are nothing." The images flickered across the screen, showing bustling streets, towering skyscrapers, and verdant landscapes. Yet to Kale, it was all a testament to humanity's insignificant civilization caught in petty conflicts and trivial pursuits. Earth trembled under the weight of an unknown menace. The skies, once a symbol of boundless possibility, now loomed heavy with dread as the world faced a threat it could neither comprehend nor repel. In the heart of Geneva, the Global Alliance Emergency Summit convened, a gathering of leaders from every corner of the planet. The air inside the grand chamber was thick with tension, the weight of fear pressing down on every soul present. At the center of the room, General Marcus Steele of the Earth Defense Coalition stood tall, his face carved with lines of exhaustion and grim determination. His voice, steady yet grave, cut through the murmurs of the assembled leaders. "At 0600 hours, he began, his words deliberate and heavy. "Unidentified objects entered our solar system. By 0612, they reached Earth's orbit. At 0615, they destroyed our orbital station." He paused, his jaw tightening as he delivered the next blow. "All personnel on board are presumed dead." The room fell into stunned silence, the weight of the loss settling over them like a suffocating blanket. A gasp escaped from one of the delegates, quickly followed by whispers of disbelief. Steele continued, his tone unyielding. "They've also targeted military installations in 3 nations. The attacks were precise, coordinated, and devastating. Hundreds of lives have been lost." His piercing gaze swept the room, daring anyone to look away. "And that's not all. They've broadcast a message to the entire planet." Suddenly, the chamber filled with a chilling sound, a voice not of this world. Deep, mechanical, and devoid of emotion, it echoed through the room like the tolling of a funeral bell. "People of Earth, we are the Zareth Dominion. Your planet is now under our protection. Disarm your weapons. Dissolve your governments. You have 48 hours to comply or face planetary correction." The words hung in the air like a curse, their meaning sinking into the hearts of everyone present. The room erupted into chaos. Voices clashed in a cacophony of panic and anger. Some shouted for immediate surrender, others demanded retaliation, while a few simply sat in stunned silence, their faces pale with fear. General Steele raised a hand, commanding the room's attention once more. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Enough. The room fell silent again, though the tension remained, crackling like static in the air. Steele's eyes burned with a fierce light as he spoke, his voice carrying a newfound resolve. "There's something you need to know," he said, his words deliberate, almost daring. "We've been preparing for this moment." With a gesture, he activated a hologram. A shimmering image appeared in the air before the sleek, imposing vessel, its design both alien and familiar. It radiated power, its form a testament to humanity's ingenuity and determination. "This," Steele declared, his voice rising with pride, "is the Shield of Soul. Humanity's first interstellar warship. A symbol of what we are capable of when we stand united." The room stared in awe at the hologram, the ship's sharp angles and glowing energy cores casting an otherworldly light across their faces. For a moment, the fear that had gripped them began to loosen its hold. Steele's voice grew stronger, filled with defiance. "We will not bow. We will not surrender. It's time to show them what humanity is capable of." The leaders exchanged glances, their fear giving way to a fragile but growing sense of hope. The Zarith Dominion may have underestimated Earth, but Steele's words sparked something deep within them, a reminder that humanity's greatest strength was not its technology, but its resilience. Outside the summit, the world remained cloaked in uncertainty, the shadow of the Zarith fleet looming ever closer. But within that chamber, a spark had been lit, a fragile ember of defiance that would soon grow into a flame. As the Zarith fleet moved silently into position above Earth, their shadows cast long and ominous across the planet's surface. Kale felt a surge of certainty, a conviction that this conquest would be effortless. The Earth, with all its beauty and complexity, was merely another prize to be claimed by the Dominion. In the vastness of space, where silence reigned supreme, the Zarith prepared to descend upon a world they deemed unworthy, unaware of the resilience and spirit that lay hidden beneath the surface of those glittering cities. Deep within the cold, silent embrace of the moon, hidden beneath layers of rock and secrecy, humanity's greatest weapon stirred. The corridors of the Shield of Soul pulsed faintly with a rhythmic hum, as though the ship itself was alive, waiting patiently for the moment it would be unleashed. Its walls gleamed with a metallic sheen, smooth and seamless, reflecting the faint blue glow of energy conduits that ran like veins through its structure. Every inch of the vessel spoke of precision, of purpose, and of the desperate hope of an entire planet. Captain Elias Drake strode through the dimly lit corridors, his boots striking the floor with a steady rhythm. His presence was commanding, his tall frame and sharp features radiating both confidence and the weight of responsibility. He passed rows of crew members, each one focused on their tasks, their faces a mixture of determination and quiet fear. They knew what was at stake. They all did. The bridge of the ship opened before him, a wide, circular chamber filled with glowing consoles and holographic displays. The air was thick with tension, the kind that crackled just before a storm. Lieutenant Aria Voss, her short auburn hair tucked neatly behind her ears, stood at one of the main control panels. Her fingers danced across the interface with practiced precision, her sharp eyes scanning readouts and diagnostics. Drake stepped onto the bridge, his voice steady but carrying the weight of command. "How does she look?" he asked, his gaze sweeping across the room. Arya turned to face him, her expression calm but her voice tinged with a quiet intensity. "All systems are green," she reported. "Graviton cannons calibrated. Shields at full capacity." "She's ready, Captain." Drake nodded, his lips pressing into a thin line as he moved to the center of the room. The captain's chair sat waiting for him, a symbol of authority and burden. He lowered himself into it slowly, his movements deliberate, his mind already racing through the plan ahead. The chair's surface was cool against his uniform, a stark reminder of the cold reality they were about to face. For a moment, he sat in silence, his hands resting on the armrests, his eyes fixed on the main display before him. It showed the black expanse of space, dotted with stars that seemed indifferent to the chaos about to unfold. Somewhere out there, the Zarith fleet loomed, their shadow falling over Earth like the hand of a god. Drake's jaw tightened. "The Zarith think we're weak," he said, his voice low but carrying through the bridge. The crew turned their heads slightly, their attention drawn to the quiet fire in his tone. "They destroyed our station. They killed our people." His hands clenched, the knuckles white against the dark fabric of his gloves. "Let's show them how wrong they are." The words hung in the air for a moment, a spark igniting in the hearts of those who heard them. Around him, the crews straightened, their fear melting into resolve. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for justice, for vengeance, for humanity's right to exist. "All stations, prepare for launch," Drake commanded, his voice sharp now, cutting through the charged atmosphere like a blade. The ship responded to his words as though it had been waiting for his command. The hum of its engines deepened, a low, resonant growl that vibrated through the very bones of the vessel. Lights flickered across the consoles, and the holographic displays shifted to show the ship's trajectory. The crew moved with purpose, their hands flying over controls, their voices calm and focused as they relayed information to one another. From the surface of the moon, a hidden hangar door began to slide open, revealing the dark void of space beyond. Dust and debris scattered as the massive vessel began to rise, its sleek, angular form emerging like a predator from its lair. The Shield of Soul was a masterpiece of human ingenuity, its hull gleaming with a dark, almost predatory sheen. Energy rippled along its surface, faint blue arcs that hinted at the power contained within. The engines roared to life, a deep, guttural sound that echoed across the lunar landscape. The ship surged forward, leaving behind a trail of light as it propelled itself into the void. Inside, the crew braced themselves, their eyes fixed on their stations, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the Shield of Soul accelerated toward the Zarith fleet, the bridge was filled with a tense silence. The enemy ships loomed ahead, their dark, alien forms like shadows against the stars. They seemed to hover effortlessly, their presence a silent declaration of dominance. But Drake's eyes burned with defiance as he stared at the fleet. "They think they own the stars," he murmured, almost to himself. "Let's remind them who we are." The ship's engines flared, and the Shield of Soul hurtled forward, a spear of light and fury aimed directly at the heart of the Zarith Dominion. The Zarith flagship, Eclipse, hovered in the vastness of space like an obsidian monolith, its surface shimmering faintly with unnatural light. Inside its command chamber, Kale, the Zarith fleet commander, stood with an aura of supreme confidence. His tall, angular form was draped in dark, flowing armor that seemed to absorb the light around him. His piercing, golden eyes stared at the display before him, where a single human ship, a mere speck against the void, dared to approach his fleet. Kale's lips twisted into a sneer, his voice dripping with disdain. "One vessel," he said, his tone mocking. "Pathetic. Is this the best they can do?" Around him, his officers chuckled, their alien features curling into expressions of amusement. The humans, it seemed, were as foolish as they were fragile. But as the Shield of Soul drew closer, something shifted. The human ship didn't behave as expected. It didn't falter or hesitate. Instead, it moved with a grace and speed that defied all logic, weaving through the void like a predator stalking its prey. Kale's second-in-command, Veyra, a sharp-featured Zarith with dark, glinting eyes, leaned forward, her amusement fading into unease. "Commander," she said, her voice tight. "Their trajectory is precise. Too precise." Kale waved a dismissive hand. "Let the interceptors deal with them," he said coldly. Outside, the Zareth interceptors' sleek, menacing crafts with razor-like wings swarmed toward the human ship. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons charging with deadly energy. From the bridge of the Eclipse, Kale watched with detached satisfaction as the interceptors closed in. But then, something unexpected happened. The Shield of Souls surged forward with blinding speed, its movements impossibly fluid. It twisted and turned with precision that no Zareth pilot could match, evading every shot fired at it. The interceptors, though fast and agile, seemed clumsy in comparison, their attacks missing by fractions of a second. "What is this?" Vera's voice broke through the growing tension, her usual composure cracking. There was a hint of panic in her tone, something Kale had never heard before. Kale's golden eyes narrowed, his sneer fading as he leaned closer to the display. The human ship wasn't just fast, it was calculating. Every maneuver was deliberate, every movement designed to outwit its attackers. Before Kale could issue new orders, a sudden burst of blue light erupted from the Shield of Soul. The energy pulse was silent, but its impact was devastating. One of the Zareth interceptors, caught directly in the blast, shuddered violently. Its sleek form began to collapse inward, its metal skin folding and crumpling as though crushed by an invisible hand. Within seconds, the ship was reduced to a dense, glowing sphere of matter, floating lifelessly in space. The bridge of the Eclipse fell silent. The laughter and mockery that had filled the room moments ago were gone, replaced by a heavy, suffocating tension. Vera turned to Kale, her eyes wide. "Commander, what kind of weapon is that?" Kale didn't answer. His gaze remained fixed on the display, his mind racing. This wasn't the primitive, desperate resistance he had expected. This was something else entirely. On board the Shield of Soul, Captain Drake sat in his chair, his expression calm but unyielding. The blue glow of the energy pulse still lingered on the main display, casting a faint light across the bridge. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces set with determination. Drake leaned forward slightly, his voice steady and commanding as he gave the order. "Broadcast this message to the Zareth fleet." A communications officer nodded, activating the ship's transmission systems. Drake's voice carried through the void, reaching not just the Eclipse, but every Zareth ship in the fleet. It was calm, measured, but filled with an unshakable resolve. "Leave our system within 24 hours, he said. "Or face the consequences." The words were simple, but their weight was undeniable. They were not a plea, nor a threat, they were a promise. Back on the Eclipse, Kale's hands tightened into fists. For the first time in his long and decorated career, he felt a flicker of doubt. It was a foreign, unwelcome sensation, one that gnawed at the edges of his confidence. He turned to Vera, his voice low and sharp. "Pull the interceptors back. I want a full analysis of that ship now." Vera hesitated for a moment, then nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. The Zareth officers around them exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier arrogance replaced by a growing sense of unease. Kale's gaze returned to the display, where the Shield of Soul now hovered, its sleek form illuminated by the light of distant stars. It was a single ship, yes, but it was unlike anything he had ever encountered. And for the first time, Kale began to wonder if the Zareth Dominion had underestimated the humans. The bridge of the Eclipse was no longer filled with the calm, calculated efficiency that had defined the Zareth fleet. The air was heavy with tension, a palpable unease that clung to every officer present. The once confident hum of activity now felt hesitant, uncertain. Kale stood at the center of it all, his tall, imposing form pacing back and forth like a caged predator. His golden eyes burned with frustration, his sharp features twisted into a scowl. "How," he growled, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. How did they develop such technology? His words hung in the air, unanswered. The officers around him exchanged nervous glances, their usual composure shattered. None dared to meet his gaze. Finally, Vera stepped forward, her movements cautious. She held her hands clasped tightly behind her back, her dark, angular face betraying the faintest hint of unease. "Admiral," she began, her voice steady but low, "their tactics, their precision, it suggests preparation. Years no, decades of preparation." Kale stopped pacing and turned to face her, his piercing eyes narrowing. "Decades," he repeated, his tone sharp. "Impossible. They were fractured, divided. Weak." Vera hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "That's what we believed," she said. "But it's clear now that we underestimated them. They've been hiding their strength, biding their time. That ship, its design, its weaponry, it's not the work of a desperate species. It's the work of a united one." Kale's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. The idea of humanity, those fragile, insignificant creatures, outsmarting the Zareth Dominion was unthinkable. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. The Shield of Soul had not only survived their assault, it had turned the tide in a single, devastating strike. He turned away from Vera, his gaze falling on the holographic display of the human ship. It hung there, a solitary figure against the endless void, defiant and unyielding. For the first time in his career, Kale felt a cold, creeping sensation of doubt. "Admiral," Vera's voice broke through his thoughts, softer now, almost hesitant. "We should consider the possibility that they've been preparing for us from the moment we first made contact. They've studied us, learned our weaknesses. And now," she trailed off, but the unspoken words lingered in the air. Kale didn't respond. His mind was a storm of conflicting thoughts, his pride battling against the growing realization that they had underestimated their enemy. Meanwhile, on Earth, far below the stars where the battle raged, a very different scene was unfolding. In a vast chamber filled with towering screens and rows of seated officials, Director Helena Ward stood at the center of the Global Alliance Council. Her presence commanded attention, her tall, slender frame radiating a quiet strength. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back tightly, and her sharp blue eyes scanned the room with unwavering focus. The council chamber was alive with tension, the murmurs of debate and fear echoing off the high, polished walls. Representatives from every nation sat at long, curved tables, their faces a mixture of determination and uncertainty. Helena raised a hand, and the room fell silent. She stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable fire. "The Zareth thought they understood us," she began, her words carrying across the chamber. "They thought we were divided. Weak. Easy to conquer." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. Her gaze swept across the council, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. They were wrong. A faint murmur rippled through the crowd, but Helena continued, her voice growing stronger. "For years, they've watched us fight amongst ourselves. They saw our wars, our conflicts, our failures. And they assumed that was all we were. But what they failed to see, what they couldn't see, is what happens when humanity is pushed to the brink." Her words struck a chord, the tension in the room shifting into something else, something fiercer. "This is our chance," Helena said, her voice rising. "Our chance to show them what humanity is truly capable of. To show them that we are not the fractured, desperate species they believe us to be. We are stronger than they know. We are united. And we will not bow." The chamber erupted into applause, the sound echoing like a thunderclap. Representatives stood, their faces alight with determination and hope. For the first time in weeks, the fear that had gripped the council began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. Helena stepped back, her expression calm but resolute. She knew the road ahead would be difficult. The Zerith were powerful, their technology advanced beyond anything humanity had ever faced. But she also knew that the strength of humanity lay not in its weapons, but in its spirit. And as the council began to mobilize, issuing orders and coordinating efforts, Helena allowed herself a small, fleeting smile. The seeds of doubt had been planted in Azarith. Now, it was time to show them the strength of Earth's resolve. The void of space was eerily silent after the chaos of battle. The remnants of the Zarith fleet were retreating, their once imposing ships now distant shadows shrinking into the blackness. But not all of them had escaped. Left behind, like discarded debris, were 5 disabled Zarith vessels hulking, lifeless forms adrift in the cold vacuum. Their sleek, obsidian surfaces bore the scars of the recent skirmish, jagged lines where human weapons had struck true. On board the Shield of Soul, the atmosphere was tense but victorious. The crew moved with purpose, their faces a mixture of relief and determination. Captain Drake stood at the center of the bridge, his steady gaze fixed on the display showing the abandoned Zarith ships. His expression was unreadable, his mind clearly turning over some unseen thought. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Prepare a rescue team." The words hung in the air, met with a stunned silence. Rescue. Voss, his second-in-command, turned to him, his face a mask of disbelief. "Rescue them." Drake met his gaze, unflinching. "Yes," he said simply. Voss took a step forward, his voice rising. "Captain, those are Zarith soldiers. The enemy. They would have killed us without a second thought." Drake's eyes didn't waver. "And that's exactly why we're doing this," he said. Around the bridge, the crew exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of risking their lives to save the enemy, an enemy that had shown no mercy, was almost unthinkable. But Drake's voice carried a weight that silenced any protests. "They are not just soldiers," he continued, his tone steady but filled with quiet conviction. "They are people. Just like us. And this is how we show the difference between us and them." Voss hesitated, his jaw tightening. "With all due respect, Captain," he said, his voice low, "this could be a trap. They could be waiting for us to get close, to lower our guard." Drake nodded, acknowledging the risk. "It's possible," he said. "But it's the risk we have to take. If we abandon them out there, we're no better than they are. If we let fear dictate our actions, we'll lose what makes us human." The bridge fell silent again, the weight of his words settling over the crew. Drake turned back to the display, his gaze fixed on the drifting ships. He could imagine the Zarith crews on board, injured and afraid, their lives hanging by a thread. They were the enemy, yes, but they were also living beings. "Send the rescue shuttles," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "And prepare medical teams. We're bringing them on board." The rescue operation was tense, every moment charged with the possibility of betrayal. The shuttles moved cautiously through the void, their lights cutting through the darkness as they approached the disabled Zarith vessels. Inside, human rescuers prepared themselves, their hands gripping their equipment tightly. Some whispered prayers, others exchanged nervous glances, but all of them knew the importance of their mission. When the shuttles docked with the Zarith ships, the rescuers found chaos. The interiors were dimly lit, the air thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burned metal. Zarith soldiers lay scattered across the floors, their once proud forms reduced to broken, bleeding figures. Some still clung to their weapons, their golden eyes flickering with suspicion and fear as the humans approached. But the rescuers didn't hesitate. They moved quickly, administering aid where they could, lifting the injured onto stretchers, and speaking in calm, soothing tones. The language barrier didn't matter, compassion transcended words. One Zarith soldier, a young female with a deep gash across her side, stared up at her human rescuer with a mixture of confusion and defiance. Her voice was weak but sharp as she rasped, Why are you helping us?" The human, a medic with a kind but weary face, paused for a moment before answering. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. The soldier's golden eyes widened slightly, her expression softening. She didn't speak again, but the tension in her body eased as the medic continued his work. Back on the Shield of Soul, the rescued Zarith were brought on board, their injuries tended to by human medics. The sight of their enemies walking or being carried through the ship's halls was unsettling for many of the crew. Whispers followed the Zarith wherever they went, a mixture of fear, anger, and curiosity. Drake stood in the medical bay, watching as his crew worked tirelessly to save lives, Zarith and human alike. He felt the weight of their stares, the unspoken questions in their eyes. But he didn't falter. One of the rescued Zarith, an older male with a shattered arm, looked up at Drake as he passed. His golden eyes were filled with something unexpected gratitude. "You could have left us to die," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Why didn't you?" Drake stopped, meeting the alien's gaze. "Because mercy is strength," he said. "And if we lose that, we'll lose everything." The Zarith soldier studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps we were wrong about you," he said. Drake didn't respond, but the words lingered in his mind as he turned and walked away. The act of mercy had planted a seed, not just in the Zarith, but in humanity itself. It was a reminder of what they were fighting for, not just survival, but the preservation of their values, their humanity. And as the Shield of Soul continued its silent vigil in the void, the line between enemy and ally began to blur, if only for a moment. The stars stretched endlessly around the Shield of Soul as it cut through the void, its course set for the Zarith capital. The ship carried more than just its crew now, it carried the weight of a gamble that could decide the future of two civilizations. Among the rescued Zarith, one figure stood out, Science Officer Lyra. Her sharp, angular features and golden eyes betrayed little emotion, but her silence spoke volumes. She observed everything, the humans, their ship, their behavior with a quiet intensity, her mind constantly working. When they arrived at the Zarith capital, the sight was both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The planet loomed before them, its surface glittering with the light of countless cities. Massive orbital stations floated like silent sentinels, their sleek designs a testament to Zarith engineering. The humans aboard the Shield of Soul felt a collective shiver of unease. They were entering the heart of enemy territory, unarmed save for their words. Drake stood at the center of the Zarith Council chamber, a vast, circular room with walls that seemed to pulse faintly with light. The Zarith councilors sat in a semicircle before him, their expressions cold and unreadable. Their golden eyes glinted like molten metal, and their robes flowed with an elegance that seemed almost otherworldly. Each movement they made was deliberate, calculated, as if every gesture carried meaning. Drake's voice was steady, though the tension in the room was suffocating. "We demand recognition of Earth's sovereignty," he said, his words echoing in the chamber. "And we propose an alliance against the Voroth swarm, a threat to us both." The councilors exchanged glances, their expressions inscrutable. One of them, a tall male with a commanding presence, leaned forward slightly. "You come here, to our capital, demanding recognition, and offering an alliance?" he asked, his voice low and measured. "You presume much, human." Drake met his gaze without flinching. I presume nothing, he replied. I speak the truth. The Voroth swarm is not a threat that can be ignored. They will come for you, just as they came for us. And when they do, your strength alone will not be enough. A murmur rippled through the council, a faint sound like the rustling of leaves. The Zarith were proud, their empire vast and powerful. To suggest they needed help from a species they had once considered inferior was a dangerous move. Lyra, standing to the side of the chamber, watched the exchange closely. She could see the tension in her people, the subtle shifts in their posture, the flicker of doubt in their eyes. She knew the Voroth swarm was a shadow that haunted even the Zarith. Drake continued, his voice calm but firm. We are not here to beg. We are here because survival demands it. Alone, we are vulnerable. Together, we stand a chance. The council fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them. The tall counselor leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. We will deliberate, he said finally. You will have our answer soon. As the council deliberated, the tension on the Shield of Soul was palpable. Days passed in uneasy silence, the humans confined to their ship while they awaited the Zaritha's decision. But within the halls of the Zarith capital, something unexpected was happening. Lyra found herself drawn to the humans she had once considered enemies. She wandered the corridors of their ship, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. She watched the way they interacted, how they argued, laughed, and debated with a passion that seemed almost chaotic. It was so different from the Zarith, whose unity was built on order and conformity. One evening, Lyra found herself speaking with Drake in the observation deck. The stars stretched out before them, an endless sea of light and possibility. Your people are strange, she said, her voice quiet but thoughtful. Drake smiled faintly. I'll take that as a compliment, he said. Lyra tilted her head, studying him. You are divided, she said. Your species fights amongst itself, wastes its resources on internal conflicts. And yet, you survive. More than that, you thrive. How? Drake's gaze remained on the stars. Because of those divisions, he said. They force us to adapt, to innovate. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every failure teaches us something new. Lyra was silent for a moment, her mind turning over his words. It is dangerous, she said finally. This chaos. It makes you unpredictable. Drake nodded. It does. But it also makes us resilient. When we're threatened, we come together. We fight for each other. For what we believe in. Lyra looked away, her golden eyes focused on the stars. My people see your divisions as a weakness, she said. But perhaps, we were wrong. When the council reconvened, Lyra stood before them, her presence commanding despite her relatively low rank. The counselors regarded her with curiosity and skepticism. What could a mere science officer have to say in such a critical moment? They are not what we thought, Lyra began, her voice steady but filled with conviction. Yes, they are divided. But those divisions drive innovation. They compete, they challenge, they adapt. Their chaos is their strength. The counselors exchanged glances, their expressions shifting slightly. Lyra continued, her golden eyes meeting theirs. They are dangerous, yes. But only when threatened. If we work with them, rather than against them, we may find an ally unlike any we have ever known. The tall counselor leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And you trust them, Lyra? These humans who have fought us, who have defied us. Lyra hesitated, her mind flashing back to the humans who had risked their lives to save her and her crew. She thought of their compassion, their resilience, their determination. "I trust their actions," she said finally. "They showed us mercy when they had no reason to. They are not perfect, but they are worthy." The council fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them. For a moment, it seemed as though the very air in the chamber had stilled, holding its breath. Finally, the tall counselor spoke. "We will consider your words, Lyra. And we will decide what is best for the Zareth." As Lyra stepped back, her heart was heavy with uncertainty. She had spoken the truth as she saw it, but she knew the decision was far from certain. The Zareth were proud, their trust hard to earn. But as she glanced at Drake, standing tall and unyielding in the face of the council's scrutiny, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, against all odds, this gamble could succeed. Perhaps two very different species could find common ground and in doing so, forge a future neither could achieve alone. In the grand chamber of the Zareth Council, the decision came like the final stroke of a bell, reverberating through the silent hall. The counselors, seated in their high, curved chairs of polished obsidian, exchanged glances heavy with hesitation. Their golden eyes gleamed in the dim light as the words of agreement were spoken aloud. It was not a decision made lightly, nor one without resistance, but it was one that would change the future of both Earth and the Zareth forever. The air in the chamber seemed to shift as the announcement echoed through the room. It was a subtle change, like the first soft glow of dawn after a long, cold night. For centuries, the Zareth had been a race defined by their strength, their conquests, and their unyielding pride. But now, for the first time in their long history, they had chosen a different path, a path of diplomacy, of cooperation, and of hope. The alliance with Earth was fragile, like a delicate thread spun from two vastly different worlds. It was built not on the ruins of destruction, but on the promise of mutual understanding. Earth's demands had been simple yet profound: peace, partnership, and the chance to face the galaxy's challenges together. For the Zareth, this was a step into the unknown, a challenge to their traditions and their deeply ingrained belief in dominance. Yet, they had chosen to take it. Among those most deeply affected by this decision was Kale. Once a formidable warrior, feared and respected by his people, Kale now found himself standing in the shadow of his own failure. His defeat at the hands of the humans had been more than a loss on the battlefield, it had been a blow to his pride, his identity, and his place among the Zareth. The whispers of his disgrace followed him wherever he went, and the weight of his shame was a constant companion. But that same defeat had planted something new within him. In the quiet moments when he was alone with his thoughts, Kale found himself reflecting on the choices he had made, the lives he had taken, and the arrogance that had blinded him to the strength of those he had once dismissed as weak. The humans had shown him something he could not ignore: strength was not only found in power, but in unity, resilience, and the willingness to fight for something greater than oneself. When the council announced Kale's reassignment as Earth's first Zareth ambassador, the news was met with mixed reactions. Many saw it as a punishment, a way to exile him from the heart of Zareth society. Others viewed it as an opportunity, a chance for Kale to atone for his mistakes and to prove that even the most hardened warrior could change. For Kale, the role was both a burden and a chance for redemption. He would be the first Zareth to walk among the humans not as a conqueror, but as a representative of peace. It was a challenge unlike any he had faced before. There would be no battles to fight, no enemies to defeat. Instead, he would have to learn to listen, to understand, and to build bridges between two peoples who had only ever seen each other as adversaries. As the day of his departure approached, Kale stood on the balcony of his quarters, overlooking the sprawling crystalline city of Zareth. The twin suns hung low in the sky, casting the world in hues of gold and crimson. The air was crisp and cool, carrying with it the faint hum of the city below. This had been his home for all his life, a place of strength and tradition. And yet, as he gazed out at the horizon, he felt a strange sense of detachment, as if he no longer belonged here. His mind was a storm of emotions. Regret for the mistakes he had made. Hope for the possibility of a new beginning. And a fierce determination to prove that he was more than his failures. He would not let this opportunity slip away. He would show both the Zerith and the humans that even the fiercest warriors could learn the language of peace. When the time came to board the ship that would take him to Earth, Kale walked through the halls of the council chamber with his head held high. The whispers of the other Zerith followed him, but he did not falter. He had made his decision, and he would see it through. As the ship lifted off, leaving the golden light of Zerith's twin suns behind, Kale stood by the window, watching his home fade into the distance. Ahead of him lay Earth, a world so different from his own, yet filled with people who had shown him a strength he could not ignore. The journey would not be easy. There would be mistrust, misunderstandings, and challenges he could not yet foresee. But Kale was ready. He would face them not as a warrior, but as an ambassador. Not with weapons, but with words. And as the stars stretched out before him, Kale allowed himself a small, determined smile. This was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where he would fight not for conquest, but for peace. The journey back to Earth was a time of reflection for Drake. As the stars streamed past the windows of the Shield of Soul, he pondered the events that had led them to this moment. Humanity had faced a formidable enemy and emerged not through the might of their weapons, but through the strength of their spirit. Upon their return, Earth was abuzz with the news of the alliance. The skies above were filled with celebrations, the people united in a shared sense of accomplishment and hope. For the first time in generations, there was a feeling that humanity was not alone in the vastness of space, that they had found allies among the stars. Drake stood on the observation deck, overlooking the vibrant blue and green of his home planet. The sight filled him with a deep sense of pride and responsibility. He knew that the alliance with Azerith was just the beginning, a first step into a broader galaxy filled with both wonders and challenges. "We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of," he mused aloud, his voice carrying a quiet strength. "Not through conquest, but through unity and compassion." His words were a testament to the journey they had undertaken, a journey that had tested their resolve and redefined their understanding of what it meant to be human. In choosing diplomacy over war, they had demonstrated that true strength lay not in domination, but in the courage to seek peace. As Earth entered this new era, there was a sense of anticipation for what lay ahead. The alliance with Azerith opened doors to possibilities once thought impossible, a future where cooperation could lead to prosperity and discovery beyond their wildest dreams. For Drake and the crew of the Shield of Soul, the mission had changed them irrevocably. They had glimpsed the vast potential of humanity when united by a common purpose, and they were ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy might bring. Together, they would forge a path forward, guided by the principles that had brought them victory: unity, compassion, and the unwavering belief in a better tomorrow. The skies above Earth and the gleaming cities of Zerith were alive with preparation. On Earth, factories roared to life, their chimneys releasing plumes of smoke as engineers and scientists worked tirelessly to craft the weapons and defenses that would be needed for the coming storm. In the Zerith capital, the air shimmered with the hum of their advanced technology, their sleek warships gliding through the atmosphere like silent predators. But amidst the chaos of preparation, something deeper was unfolding. Humans and Zerith, once locked in the grip of mutual distrust, began to see each other in a new light. On Earth, Zerith advisors walked among the human cities, their tall, elegant forms drawing both awe and curiosity. Children stared wide-eyed at their golden eyes and flowing robes, while elders whispered of how strange it was to see former enemies standing side by side. On Zareth, human soldiers and scientists worked alongside their alien counterparts. The humans brought with them a fiery determination, their ingenuity evident in their ability to adapt quickly to the Zareth's advanced systems. The Zareth, in turn, watched with quiet fascination as the humans infused their work with emotion, laughing, arguing, and celebrating even the smallest victories. In the heart of the Zareth capital, Drake and Lyra stood together, observing the combined efforts of their people. The tension that had once defined their relationship had softened, replaced by a tentative respect. "They are stronger than I thought," Lyra admitted, her voice thoughtful. "Your people, they face fear not with silence, but with defiance. It is admirable." Drake turned to her, his expression serious. "And your people," he said, "have shown us what it means to endure. To stand together as one, even in the face of overwhelming odds. We have much to learn from each other." As the days turned into weeks, the bond between the two species grew. They began to share not just strategies and resources, but stories and traditions. Around campfires on Earth and beneath the glowing crystals of Zareth's great halls, they spoke of their histories, their dreams, and their fears. Slowly, the walls of mistrust crumbled, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of unity. The Voroth invasion loomed like a shadow on the horizon, but for the first time, neither Earth nor Zareth faced it alone. Together, they prepared to meet the storm, their alliance forged in the crucible of necessity and tempered by the shared hope for survival. High above Earth, the Shield of Soul hovered in silent orbit, its sleek form gleaming against the backdrop of the infinite stars. From this vantage point, Earth looked small and fragile, a shimmering blue jewel cradled in the darkness of space. Yet, despite its size, it pulsed with a vitality and resilience that defied the vastness around it. Inside the ship, Drake stood on the observation deck, his hands clasped behind his back. The weight of recent events pressed heavily on his shoulders, but his gaze was steady as he stared out at the horizon. The stars, once distant and unreachable, now felt closer than ever. Lyra approached quietly, her footsteps barely audible. She joined him at the window, her golden eyes reflecting the light of the distant stars. "It is beautiful," she said softly, her voice carrying a rare note of wonder. Drake nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It is," he agreed. "But it's also fragile. Everything we've fought for, everything we've built, it could all be gone in an instant." Lyra regarded him carefully. "And yet, you still fight," she said. "Even knowing how fragile it is." "Why?" Drake turned to her, his eyes fierce. "Because it's worth fighting for," he said. "Because this our home, our people, it's everything. And now, it's not just about Earth. It's about something bigger. It's about proving that we belong out here, among the stars." Lyra was silent for a moment, her gaze returning to the planet below. "Your people have a way of seeing hope, even in the darkest places," she said quietly. "Perhaps that is your greatest strength." Drake smiled faintly. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe it's just stubbornness." As the two stood in silence, the stars seemed to stretch endlessly before them, a vast ocean of light and possibility. The alliance between Earth and Zareth was still young, its future uncertain. But in that moment, there was a sense of something greater, a legacy that would outlast them all. "This is just the beginning," Drake said finally, his voice filled with quiet determination. "The galaxy will know the name of Earth. Not because of our weapons, or our wars, but because of what we can build together. With you. With anyone willing to stand with us." Lyra glanced at him, a flicker of something almost like a smile crossing her lips. Then let us make sure they remember it, she said. And as the shield of soul floated above the earth, a symbol of humanity's resilience and strength, the stars beckoned them forward. The galaxy, vast and mysterious, awaited their next steps. And this time, they would walk into it not as conquerors, but as explorers, allies, and dreamers.